That was Sonambient. This is a Harry Bertoia podcast.
Good morning. This is Celia Bertoia of the Harry Bertoia Foundation. We're here in St. George, Utah. It's the middle of June 2020. I have with me here this morning in our gallery two of our assistants. We have Brett Stanfield, who is an artist in his own right. He specializes in printmaking, and he's also a teacher of English and art, and may soon be going off to the Peace Corps. Thank you for being here, Brett.
Thank you.
And we also have Michael Neve, who is a veteran. He served time in Afghanistan, and we thank you for that, Mike. And he's also an artist in his own right, and he's been giving me a lot of ideas about how to do podcasts and get on Patreon and all kinds of fun things. Thanks for being here, Mike.
Sure.
Well, first of all, for each of you, I'm wondering what it was that attracted you about the Harry Bertoia Foundation and made you want to come here. Brett, why don't you tell us?
For me, it was printmaking. I got on the website and saw a couple of his prints, and so I didn't know anything, to be honest, about Harry Bertoia before I came here, and I didn't know about his sculpture making or anything like that. So I was really more interested in getting to know him as a printer and, see how I could interact with that work, which is why I sent out an email and asked if I could volunteer. So that was kind of what attracted me to the Harry Bertoia Foundation.
And Mike, what about you? What drew you to the foundation?
Over the past few years, I've been trying to learn a lot about art. And I had just come back from overseas, and I had been going through Italy, learning, trying to figure out this art stuff. And I came back here, and I wanted to continue it. And in St. George, there's not a lot of ways to do that. And I just happened to see a posting, and I thought, well, at least that way I could learn something. It might teach me something about the art industry. And I like Brett, I didn't know anything about Harry Bertoia or anything, but when I looked it up, I thought, wow, how is that? I was surprised that it was even a possibility here in this place, and so, and I just thought it would be a good way for me to continue learning, and so far I really have learned a lot.
Mm-hmm. And how long have you been working here, Mike?
It's 6 or 8 months now, I think, or.
Gosh, it's been that long. Yeah. And Brett, you've been here at least, a few months?
Yes, February, I think.
Mm-hmm. And then we all had to take a COVID break there for a while.
Yeah.
But, okay.
Unfortunately.
Yes. Now, Brett, tell me exactly what are your tasks here? What projects are you focused on?
The main project I'm working on is the catalog liaison, entering monotypes, and the idea of the catalog is my understanding is to digitize the work and have there be something so people can look up to see if they have an actual Bertoia at home, or as a resource for academics or people who are interested in looking at Harry Bertoia's art. So that's mostly what I've been doing, is entering monotypes into the catalog, and I also help with some other tasks or projects, whatever, maybe some marketing ideas or editing or something like that.
Okay, very good. And how many entries are in the catalog raisonné now?
I just looked. I think we're at 1,012.
Wow, that's quite a bit.
Yeah, when I started here, I think there were maybe a little over 300, I think.
Gosh.
So.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent. And Mike, what have you been working on here at the foundation?
Mostly the other side of the catalog. I mostly put stuff into the archives. So it's a lot of papers and articles and a lot of things. One big one that was the scrapbook that your mother made. That was quite a project, and getting all that.
Right, she had
put
all
into
her
the-
little notes in there about
Yeah.
gave to Klaus or sold to Mark, and
Yeah.
of course we don't know who Mark is, but yeah, that was quite a completion there. And Mike, what would you say? What are some of the most important things that you've learned here?
For me, just understanding more about the art industry, learning about Harry Bertoia's life. He was an artist as pure as it gets, and not only was he a pure artist, he was also successful at it to where he could support his family with it, which is very rare nowadays. But just learning about the way that worked out, the machinations, the whether or not it was on purpose, the way his life, the reasons why it worked out well. He was obviously extremely talented, but him going to Cranbrook and meeting the certain people and networking in certain ways and just working really hard. I've learned a lot about, and they don't teach you that in school. So to me, it's invaluable because your art teacher doesn't even know that stuff. Like just learning what the day to day, and it seems almost silly, but just going through all the monotypes, just looking over so many, and just the fact that he did so many and knowing how he did them and what how he worked with galleries and just the whole thing has been good for me to understand more about the art industry, just because you do, especially in a place like this, it's not apparent at all, and so it's very valuable information to me.
Well, I like that phrase that you used, pure artist. I hadn't really thought of that, but that's a really great description for Harry Bertoia. Art was his life, really, and everything he did related back to the art he was creating. Well, Brett, I could ask you the same question. What are some of the most important things you've learned here?
The big takeaway for me is he worked every day, and he worked really hard. And I remember you telling a story where somebody asked Harry Bertoia, "How do you come up with all of your ideas, or why are you so creative?" And he said, "Well, I work at it every day." And that, because when you go through, at least at the bachelor level, when you go through art school, or my degree is in creative writing with a minor in art, you don't really learn how to set up a schedule, how to work every day, the ins and outs of, this being a job, because that's what it is. It's a job, and you have to be skilled in business as well as marketing, as well as creativity, as well as knowing what you're doing in terms of elements of design, things like that. And the thing I find impressive about Harry Bertoia's work is, and I think unique, is being able to look at these monotypes, but then seeing the sculpture he made from the monotype, the idea. His process was so complete whenever he made something, because he made it in all these different ways. He did a sketch with a monotype, and then he worked to bring it to life, and he made a smaller scale, and then he'd make a larger scale sculpture. It was a very complete idea. So he even took into consideration the shadows that the piece would cast in the environment where the piece was being set, and I think he was only able to reach the completeness of that idea by creating it in so many different mediums. So that's something I've been trying at home to recreate, and that's something I really took away from this work. So
I love all these points you're bringing up. And Harry, my father, had to do it, and of course we have to do it here at the foundation, is the whole shebang. I mean, you don't just have these inspirational, fantastic ideas and create beauty all the time. There are a ton of logistics and details and phone calls, and I find myself learning shorthand online, and how to use MailChimp, and all these things that are definitely not my area of expertise. And then I also have to deal with the public relations of sending out a newsletter, and most people are, oh, great to hear about what the foundation is doing. But no matter how non-political and innocuous you think you're being, someone will manage to take offense, and then I need to bring them back into the fold that, oh, I'm sorry we offended you, and so yeah, many different roles. And Harry totally took all that into he took it by the he really took it into his hands, and he never had a secretary, so the bills got paid. In fact, sometimes they got paid twice if an invoice came across his desk. Anyway, yeah, it really is the whole picture. And one other question I could ask both of you. For people who do not know much about Harry Bertoia, what do you think would be the main takeaway if they got acquainted with his work? Let's say someone stumbles across him on Facebook or our website. What might interest just your average American?
for me, I think it's his relationship with nature and how you can see that in so much of his work. And it's kind of funny because I've been thinking a lot about this recently, simply because when you go on Instagram or I think most people know Harry Bertoia for his chairs that he made with Knoll. But although they are very well, I mean, they're great chairs, they're very well designed, and they're really innovative and everything. When you look at the larger breadth of his work, he really was trying to create things that could exist along with nature and in nature. When you think of the sculptures and, you know, these bushes he would create or anything. And the idea of taking, you know, something that was influenced by, you know, a dandelion or something and putting it into a gallery space or something like that. It forces a discussion of nature, which I think is really poignant right now when we think about climate change or whatever. So that's the one thing I take away from his work, and I really like about it, is this relationship and discussion with nature and the environment. I think is something that really, in my opinion, sums up his work. So that's a great correlation. And nature is something that anyone of any age or color or gender, anybody can relate to nature. Mm-hmm. Mike, how would you see, what could just an average American pick up from Harry Bertoia?
I think what strikes me the most probably overall is his integrity with everything he did. It's extremely well made. I mean, from the chair to the sculptures are just absolutely intricate and extremely well designed. Everything he did, he was extremely earnest, and he was, like I say, like the pure artist thing, to me, it really describes him. Like you say, he worked extremely hard, but everything he did, he was very earnest about it, and he didn't cut any corners. And I think, and that's one thing that's interesting to me is a lot of times, especially abstract art. Now, he was doing it when it was in its incipient. It was a new thing back then. I mean, it had started around 1908 or something. That was the very beginning, and so it was a kind of a blockbuster movement. But over time and nowadays, we kind of think of it as like, well, and I don't mean to use Jackson Pollock as an example, but sometimes we see somebody throwing paint at a canvas and go, well, I mean, what the heck? And it kind of it gets correlated, and it has gotten correlated, especially with like Andy Warhol too. It's like this manufactured, this quick thing, and people just throw it together, and you kind of go, well, I guess somebody cares. But when you look at Harry Bertoia's work, it's every single, like, and you, just looking at it, you can tell how earnest it is, and especially like the bushes, and just everything he did is so well made. And I don't think that I prior to becoming acquainted with Harry Bertoia and his work, I hadn't seen any abstract artist that I thought that person really cares. Like, but Harry Bertoia, he really was earnest about it, and he was very serious about it, and he did an excellent work.
I know for myself, sometimes I go to a museum and you go into the contemporary art section, and I just don't get it, frankly. You know, you see these things, and Harry's work is abstract, it's modern, but it's relatable. Everyone who looks at it has some kind of visceral response, mostly one of joy or delight, but sometimes, I mean, I remember being a little kid, and I would look at the spill cast sculptures, and I just thought they were messy and ugly, because I couldn't relate to it. Whereas the dandelions I loved, and the bushes. But this has been an enlightening short conversation with you two. And I appreciate hearing your point of view. Is there anything else you'd like to say?
I just had a thought to agree with Mike that his skill as a welder, you know, I think about the big fountain he made for Philadelphia, and how, you know, when I saw the picture, it looked so complete. You know, these great swooshing shapes and sheets of metal, and I thought, you know, oh, it must be a large sheet of metal, but actually it's, you know, individual pipes that they connected and then melted. And I mean, the amount of time and thought and effort that went into creating this piece, I mean, it's breathtaking. And whether you agree, you like it or not, you have to admit that, you know, his craftsmanship is certainly at a higher level than most, you know, and that's something you really see for the average American, I think, can really take away from his work, is just his skill as a welder and, you know, creator of objects. It's breathtaking, I think.
Yes. So. Thank you for that comment. Any last words, Mike?
No, just I've found with Harry Bertoia, if you look past, because obviously everybody knows the chairs, and you kind of can get an idea of some of his work if you look it up on Google. But if you really look into it, there's some just beautiful things that he's made. That if you get into looking at him, some of the sunlit straw type of thing, just there's so many things that will just blow your mind but you kind of got to look past the surface and the kind of popularized version of it. But I've been really impressed with him. I've learned a lot.
Well, thank you very much to you both. I'm constantly amazed at how how much I learn being in this business, not only about my father and his work, but just what other people get out of it. I'm very grateful. So that will conclude our session today. You can always go to harrybertoia.org.